Watch your words. Watch your words. All right, we're there. Let's turn in our Bibles together. I just mentioned that in the prayer, so let's do that. Let's turn to the letter we call Ephesians, the letter that the Apostle Paul wrote to some Christians in that town through the inspiration of God's Holy Spirit. Ephesians chapter 4, as we begin today. Ephesians chapter 4. Let's begin reading together in chapter 4 at verse 17 of that chapter. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 17. Paul writes this, Ephesians 4:17. Now this I say and testify in the Lord, that you must no longer walk as the Gentiles do, in the futility of their minds. They are darkened in their understanding, alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them, due to their hardness of heart. They have become callous and have given themselves up to sensuality, greedy, to practice every kind of impurity. But that is not how you learned Christ, assuming that you have heard about him and were taught in him, as the truth is in Jesus. And here's part of what that means then. He says in verse 22, it means to put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life, and is corrupt. You might hang on to that word corrupt through deceitful. You might hold on to that one, deceitful desires. And to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to put on the new self. Put off the old self. Verse 22 says, now the other side, put on the new self. And then the last part of this verse, this paragraph, created after the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness. That's coming from Ephesians 4:17 through 24. As we read these verses, one word could be the word renewal. If you've got a copy of the handout, you might see that somewhere near the top. Renewal. Renewal. That being a Christian, becoming a Christian first and then being a Christian, is about God, through Jesus, making us new, or it's about renewal. Renewal. Someone wrote it this way, that it's like being in a play, and we've got some people here that like to go to plays, some that have even been in some recent plays, but it's like an actor or an actress coming out on stage. When a Christian comes new in Jesus, it's like they come out and now things are to be different. But if a Christian doesn't live differently, they just go right back to living the same old life they had, then it's like the actor or the actress comes on stage and they start reciting their lines, but they're not the lines for that play. They're the lines for the previous play they were in. That's what it looks like if a Christian doesn't live differently. Because what is meant to happen, what Jesus wants to happen in this passage and in our lives, is for us to have a new role. It's really a return role back to this likeness, this image of God, with new lines, a new part to play in the stage of our lives, in this new play called being a Christian. And it's no pretending matter. Part of what that means, to get more specific, even if you keep reading this chapter, and we're going to do a bit of that together today, is that Jesus changes how we speak. Jesus changes my words, our words. Being renewed includes this morning, and for this morning, it is focused on how I talk, or how I text, or how I post on social media. Let's take this morning to consider three aspects of how Jesus changes how we talk. And you could think of them as some instructions for our speech. Watch your words. What does that mean? For Jesus, that means tell the truth. Don't corrupt. And then build up. Tell the truth. Don't corrupt. And build up. All with how we use what comes out of our mouth or what goes from our thumbs. Let's look at them together. First, tell the truth. Let's keep reading right where we are, Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25, the next verse in Ephesians 4. It begins, in most English versions, with the word therefore. Because of what it means to be new, to be created all over again in Jesus, some things have to change going forward. New lines in the new play. He says, therefore, having put away falsehood. Remember back in the previous paragraph, you put off the old self when you're baptized into Jesus. You die to the old self. Part of that is the deceitful desires of that former life. That was your old life. Well, that old life is going to do its best through Satan and the world and some of those desires that tend to sometimes linger. It's going to do its best, that old life, to come back in. So you have to put it all, keep putting it away. He says, you have put it away. Then he says, let each one of you speak the truth. Or let every person be honest. Speak the truth. And then he says, with his neighbor, for we are members of one another. So the reference for telling the truth to your neighbor here gets more narrow when he says to those who are your members with. If we were to go back to the first part of this chapter, we'd read of how being a Christian means you're in a membership, you're in a body. Jesus' body. Jesus is the head of the church, which is his body, the text says. Okay. So here's where you can have a little fun. You can say, so that means I'm not supposed to lie to my fellow church members, but if they're not a Christian, if it's somebody just in the world, that means I can just lie to them, right? Shake or nod. Okay, I don't think that's what that means, okay? Yeah, you don't want to lie to anybody, but it's emphasized here that it's almost like if you were, if you're going to lie, it's better to not be the last person you'd want to lie to. Be somebody in your spiritual family. And maybe it's there because it's those that we get comfortable with. It's those that we get to know well. It's our family, sometimes physical, but it works spiritually too, that we might sometimes actually have more trouble with. Lie. So I want you to tell the truth. Honesty matters. A recent survey revealed that, and this wasn't for just Christians or anything like that, just people. 91% of those surveyed admitted on this survey, I'm assuming it was an anonymous survey, but they said they lie daily about what they consider trivial matters. 36% of people surveyed admitted that they lie about important things. And then we could debate, are there really anything that is we could lie about? We could say, well, that's not that bad. It's a little white lie. Isn't that what we call them? But regardless of any of that, if we're not careful, we will lie a lot. We'll lie without thinking about it. We'll lie to cover our tracks. We'll lie to keep from hurting somebody's feelings. We'll lie to make ourselves look better and sound better in the job interview, or when someone says, well, did you do that you said you were going to do? And you said, yeah, I did. But Ephesians 4:25 says that telling the truth is no small issue for the Christian. And when it comes to not lying, it's not just, okay, this is your rule. It's wrong to lie. Tell the truth. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. I don't know how far that motivation in an ethic works, where you just do what's right because it's the right thing. It's the rule you're told to follow. There's more to it than that for the Christian. For the Christian, it's, I'm in Jesus. For the Christian, it is that Jesus and God, and we recently talked about this a few weeks back, that God is the ultimate reality. God cannot lie. It's one of the things God cannot do. It was said of Jesus that Jesus had no deceit in his mouth. Just it wasn't there at all. That's what it's for us. It's that when I take words and I twist the truth, I color the truth. Have you noticed that? We've invented words to describe what we do with the truth. We pervert it, change it, we play fast and loose with the truth. Whenever I do that, let's just say when I tell a lie, I am going directly against who Jesus is at his core. And I'm a Christian. Let's turn in our Bibles to Matthew chapter 5 and hear it from Jesus' mouth himself as recorded by Matthew. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 33, we find ourselves near the beginning of what has gone down in history as the Sermon on the Mount. As Jesus gives a number of these countering ethics here, where this is what you've heard, this is what the teachers have taught you, here's the way it really is in reality with God. Matthew chapter 5, 33 through 37, he says, "Again, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black." Here's the conclusion. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from the evil one or from evil. Jesus says, I want you to be a person. We say a man of your word. I guess we're supposed to say a woman of your word too. But Jesus says, I want you to be someone that people can take. If you say something, they're going to take that and trust that, because not only is that how you operate, part of it is even then you begin to develop a reputation. That if they tell me something, they say, yes, I'm going to do that, and they're going to do it. I think about that. Am I allowed to quote an Alabama song in a sermon? Don't shake or nod on that one. We'll just go with it. But I think about that line, that a good word and a handshake is all you need. If that were true of every Christian, not everybody in the whole world, just every Christian in the world, if that was the case, that you could take their word, and maybe you didn't have to have a handshake, but we will throw the handshake in there. It's like the statue just down the street here, right, with the two cowboys shaking hands in front of the bank. Now you got to practically sign your whole life away, right, on a contract after contract, and dotted line after dotted line, and all the information and everything and the assets just to... As a Christian, honesty should be a big deal for me. Here's a little something else to think about. I've read part of this here before, but it's been a while, and I think might be time to read it again. These are the famous American fibs, is what they're called. Here they are, in no particular order. The check is in the mail. I'll start my diet tomorrow. We service what we sell. Give me your number and the doctor will call you right back. Money cheerfully refunded. Yeah. One size fits all. This offer limited to the first 100 people who call in. Your luggage isn't lost. it's only misplaced. Leave your resume and someone will get back to you. I never got your message. I just need 5 minutes of your time. Your table will be ready in 5 minutes. Open wide. And I don't see Danny and Kathy here this morning, but open wide, it won't hurt a bit. Let's have lunch sometime. It's not the money, it's just the principle that matters. And then these last two, well, you haven't changed a bit. And then I was only trying to help. Call them what you will. God says, if you're going to be a Christian who lives for Jesus, make sure that what comes out of your mouth is true. Make sure that what you post, what you share, and there may be several of us that have been guilty of that and we just didn't realize, we didn't do our research, and we share that article that sounds so good or that news heading that looks really exciting, and it's a hoax. Or we send those messages that you pass on that sound so horrible, and there's nothing true about them. And there's something about that, social media and texting. I'm not even going to, I could say emailing, but that's becoming a thing of the past. Sometimes we'll say things, we'll do things in the sense of sharing and reacting to things that we wouldn't otherwise in person. Tell the truth, because honesty matters to Jesus. But then, even on that note of what we text and post, he also says, don't corrupt. Let's go back to Ephesians chapter 4 and look at another verse, Ephesians 4, verse 29. We're still in that section where he's taking what you are in Jesus and then saying this is how you need to live for Jesus. Ephesians 4, verse 29 says, don't corrupt. Here's how it's specifically stated in verse 29. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths. That pointed. There shouldn't be anything as a child of God that exits your lips that is corrupting. You might put the word unhealthy in there as you try to grasp what that means, corrupting here. And when we use the word corruption, our minds often drift, we think, to politicians and those who might be corrupt. But this is about how we use our words to hurt people, to tear people down. The word here for corrupt or corrupting, it's used a couple other places in the Bible by Jesus, in fact, to refer to rotten fruit. Isn't that, you can see, yeah, isn't that appetizing, by the way? Or he also uses it to refer to fish that are not so great anymore, and they, if there's anything that's going to stink when it's spoiled and really smell, it's going to be some rotten fish, isn't it? That's what this text says about our words. To watch our words, that our words can either be like fruit that we give to someone that's nourishing and healthy and helpful, or it's like handing somebody a rotten apple. Here you go. What might be easier is to think on the receiving side. Have you ever felt that way when somebody said something to you? Maybe it was the tone, maybe it was the words, and they might have included some profanity. Maybe they took the Lord's name in vain. Or maybe it was just what they said to you and about you, that it felt like they were handing you something that just reeked. Nasty and unhealthy. Raise your hand if you've ever had your mouth washed out with soap. Anybody? Okay, and I'm raising my hand. It happens. I won't tell you how old I was. I won't tell you any of the details. All right, that's just going too far. But I've had it happen. My mother washed my mouth out with soap one time. That That's what Ephesians 4:29 is saying. So as a Christian, don't ever talk so that somebody needs to take you and wash your mouth out with soap. But we get careless. We say things without thinking. We say, "Oh my God," or we'll be better and say, "Oh my gosh." Or we turn to somebody and say something like, "Why would you say that? Why did you do that? Why are you so stupid?" Okay, I'm quoting what we say. Okay, I'm not saying that to y'all this morning. Some of you were giving me a weird look. I think you just woke up when I said that, right? What a thing to wake up to in a sermon. And that's when we make those comments on Facebook that we might go back and delete later, but the damage is usually already done. In Ephesians chapter 5, verse 4, there, just a few verses later, we're warned about coarse or crude jesting or joking. And we'll do that too, won't we? We'll say something mean-spirited to somebody. And when we begin to suffer some of the reaction for it, we'll say, "I was just kidding." Or we come and we might not do it in certain company, but around certain people, we'll tell that joke that really shouldn't be told. Have you noticed that too, that there are some things, and part of this is even a federal law, there's some things you're not allowed to say on public TV. And there are those times when the news reporter says something and they have to cut to another news reporter because they said something that you're not allowed to say on TV. Or they'll bleep it out. But the implication is that it's okay to say it, generally, just you don't need to say it in that context. Those words that are inappropriate for public television, but are perfectly fine in my living room. He says, don't hand somebody a piece of rotten fruit. Don't hurt them. Don't harm them. Don't say things that are going to corrupt other people and their heart. And then one more this morning. It's really the rest of this statement. He says, build up. Don't lie or tell the truth. Don't corrupt. Instead, build up. Let's go back to Ephesians 4 one more time and read the rest of verse 29. Here's the solution this morning. We've seen the tell the truth, don't lie. You might say that is negative. Don't corrupt. And then this. He says, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion. And that doesn't mean you can say certain words that are profane in certain contexts. It means you do think about where you are and be the person even. Are they ready to receive this word? So be thoughtful in your words. To make that clear, he says that it may give grace to those who hear, or be graceful. And when the Christian reads the word grace, at least one of the things that should come to mind is the gospel. It's Jesus. So he says you take the gospel, you're a Christian, part of how you live the gospel is with what you say. The goal of your words shouldn't be just to get things done, conduct your business. Shouldn't be to manipulate and get people to do what you want them to do. That the goal of what I say every day should be to give people grace. So be purposeful in how you speak, he says. Speak with purpose. Most of us, we just say things. We just talk. Christian is called by Jesus to speak carefully, to give thought to what we say. And this passage takes it up, right? It's first, just say what's true. Then it's, don't say what's corrupting. And then it's, say things that build people up. I could go my whole life and never say something that tears you down. I'm not saying I have, but I could. Jesus wants more than that. Jesus says, no, I want you to tell people things. I want you to say things and say them in such a way that encourages them. It's the fruit, or in this case, it's the brick. Think of their life, their heart, like a wall, a building. And there's enough in our world to help us come down, to crumble us. You hand them a stone, a brick, that will help them to build their life, not tear them down. It's like those three gates. Have you heard that? I wonder if someone was reading Ephesians 4 when they wrote that, saying, is it true? For it passes the gate of your mouth. Is what I'm about to say true? But you can't stop there. That'd be stopping at verse 25. And we'll do that too, won't we? We'll say, well, what I said was true. When I gossiped about you, I didn't lie. The second gate is it necessary? As Paul would put it, does it fit the occasion? Did you need to say that? Or did you just feel like you wanted to say that? And then that third gate might be the second half of Ephesians 4:29, is what I'm about to say, kind. If we could simply do that, if we could go the rest of today, the rest of this week, and all that we said pass that test, is it kind? Is it grace? Then Jesus would have changed how we speak. Brandon's going to lead us in just a moment in a song to encourage us to become and to be what Jesus wants us to be. There are about 800,000 words in our language, the English language. About 300,000 of those are technical terms that most people don't really need to know anyway. But the average person knows about 10 to 15,000 of those words in their vocabulary. The average person uses about half of those words. They say about, not those words, but they speak about 5,000 words every day. Jesus says to me today, watch those words as we stand together and sing.